So for over 3 years, the world has been living under the shadow of US sanctions.
Alright, let's talk about Sean Foo, one of YouTube's many self-proclaimed geopolitical experts, who pushes bold claims with weak arguments. Now, I respect differing opinions, but misleading people with cherry-picked facts? That's where I draw the line. Welcome to my channel, where I call out misinformation in geopolitics and global economics. No sugarcoating, no nonsense, just facts, logic, and real analysis. And today, Sean Foo is in the hot seat. His latest video is packed with claims that don't hold up under scrutiny, and I'm about to break them down one by one. Think he's right? Prove me wrong in the comments. But come with facts, not feelings. If all you have is bias and blind loyalty, don't waste your time. Let's get into it. Claim 1.
So for over 3 years, the world has been living under the shadow of US sanctions.
Foo makes it sound like US sanctions are some brand new, sinister force unleashed in the last few years. But let's get real. Sanctions have been a core part of US foreign policy for decades. According to Econofact, US sanctions have increased ninefold between 2000 and 2021. That's not a 3-year trend. That's a long-term strategy used by multiple administrations. Cuba has been under sanctions since 1962. Iran? Since 1979. These policies didn't just appear out of thin air because the US decided to be mean. They were responses to real geopolitical conflicts. Foo's narrative suggests that sanctions are some sudden, crushing burden the world is struggling under. But the reality? They've always been a tool in the US playbook. Whether you agree with them or not, pretending they're a brand new phenomenon is just misleading. Claim 2.
The US weaponized the dollar architecture against Putin, but now Trump is going to go one step further. He's weaponizing the US consumer market like never before.
Oh, come on. The idea that Trump was the first to weaponize tariffs is just plain wrong. If anything, US presidents have been slapping tariffs on imports like it's a national pastime. Remember 2009? The Obama administration put a 35% tariff on Chinese tires to protect US manufacturers. And guess what? The Biden administration kept many of Trump's tariffs on China in place. That's because tariffs aren't about one president's personal grudge. They're about long-term economic strategy. So no, Trump didn't invent the idea of using tariffs as leverage. It's been done before, and it's still happening. The difference? Foo wants you to think it was some radical new move, when in reality, it was just politics as usual. Claim 3.
The US has threatened the world with secondary tariffs. It's a new type of trade weapon that forces countries to listen to the US or get punished.
Here's where things get really interesting. Foo paints this dramatic picture of the US holding countries hostage with secondary sanctions. The reality? Not everyone listens. Not by a long shot. Take China, for example. Despite US sanctions, they kept buying oil from Iran. Simple. They used intermediaries and traded in currencies other than the US dollar. If US secondary sanctions were as all-powerful as Foo claims, China would have backed off. Instead, they found ways around them. That's the reality of international politics. Countries adapt. They don't just roll over because the US says so. So while sanctions and tariffs do apply pressure, they don't always force compliance. Foo's narrative of the US pulling every economic string is just wrong. Claim 4.
By threatening tariffs to buyers of Venezuelan oil, Trump wants to reduce their exports to zero. It will crush the entire country's economy and send it back to the Stone Age.
Oh boy, here we go. This is where Foo takes a half-truth and stretches it into a full-blown fantasy. Yes, US sanctions have hurt Venezuela. That's not even up for debate. But to say that Trump's policies alone destroyed Venezuela's economy? That's an insult to reality. Let's look at the Economics Observatory's findings. Venezuela's economic collapse started long before Trump tightened sanctions. In 2014, when oil prices crashed, Venezuela's economy spiraled. By 2016, it had already contracted by 18.6%. That's before Trump's harsher measures. And why did Venezuela collapse so badly? Corruption, mismanagement, over-reliance on oil. The Council on Foreign Relations notes that the government simply didn't prepare for a drop in oil revenue. And when prices crashed, their economy imploded. Sanctions were a factor, but they weren't the factor. The idea that the US single-handedly sent Venezuela back to the Stone Age is pure fiction. Claim 5.
Through multiple joint ventures, Chevron has been producing and exporting Maduro's oil from the ground to the world. Now Trump could always remove the waiver and force Chevron to shut down operations.
Sounds simple, right? Trump removes a waiver, Chevron packs up, and Venezuela's oil stops flowing. But reality doesn't work that way. Yes, Chevron operates in Venezuela, but under very tight restrictions from the U.S. Treasury's Office of Foreign Assets Control, OFAC. Ever heard of General License 41B? Probably not, because Sean Foo conveniently ignores it. This waiver, issued on March 24, 2025, only allows Chevron to wind down certain transactions, not freely produce and export Venezuelan oil like he suggests. According to the U.S. Treasury, these licenses come with strict conditions, meaning Chevron can't just pump oil and ship it worldwide as if there were no sanctions in place. And even if Trump kills the waiver tomorrow, let's be real, Venezuela's oil exports won't just stop. Why? Because China and India are still buying. The U.S. might have a say, but it doesn't control global oil markets. Removing the waiver would be a speed bump, not a brick wall for Venezuela's oil industry. Sean Foo wants you to believe the U.S. holds all the power here. But in reality, it's just not that simple. Claim 6.
So many small teapot refineries could collapse and even shut down operations if the US goes ahead with this.
Claiming China's refineries could collapse is pure exaggeration. The reality? China's refining industry is a powerhouse, with 19.3 million barrels per day in capacity as of 2024. That's massive. And Venezuelan oil? It's barely a blip in China's total imports. So if Trump slaps tariffs on buyers of Venezuelan oil, what happens? China adjusts. They've done it before and they'll do it again, turning to Russia, the Middle East, and domestic reserves. They spent years dodging U.S. sanctions, using intermediaries and offshore payment networks. And here's what Foo doesn't mention. Beijing is actively upgrading its refining industry, shutting down outdated plants and replacing them with more advanced, adaptable ones. If anything, China is becoming less vulnerable, not more. So no, a tariff on Venezuelan oil buyers won't cripple China's refineries. It won't even dent them. At the end of the day, Foo's takes sound dramatic, but they crumble under real scrutiny. And if you still think he's right, hey, prove me wrong in the comments. Just bring facts, not feelings. That's it for today.